Are you a retro video game collector or enthusiast and are really just tired of paying some of those retro collector prices for games now? I know I am. There's actually a solution for that right now, and that solution is the Evercade line of consoles. And today I'm going to be focusing a little bit on the Evercade Versus or VS home console. And I know there are a couple of handhelds, one that's an original handheld, one that's a newer handheld with some built-in games, but we're going to be focusing on just a little bit of a coverage, initial impressions, and let's talk about its future of the retro market in the hands of the Evercade Versus. So let's go ahead and go down that road for a minute, all right? Now, the Evercade Versus is a home console that, and it's interesting because it plays retro games, but it also plays some indie games and newer indie home computer games, as well as some arcade games as well. So there's kind of a mixed collection going on here, but really let's talk about the hardware really quick first. So you've got HDMI output, you've got USB power, you have 4 USB inputs on the front for hardwired controllers. You can also adapt a few different third-party controllers to it as well to help with whatever playstyle you have. But also in the hardware, it has an ARM Cortex quad-core processor, 512 megabytes of RAM, DRAM specifically, 4 gigabytes of internal storage. It does also have Wi-Fi. But that being said, the Wi-Fi is to connect and give you some firmware updates for the system, quality of life things, but it is not required currently to play the line of games that are out for it. So that's a plus. But what is the system really competing with in this day and age? Because you have much more powerful consoles out there and handhelds out there like Xbox and PlayStation and whatnot. And what is this really competing with? This is competing with the Coleco Chameleon. Oh, I'm sorry, the Retro Chameleon. Is this competing with the newer announced Atari 2600 Plus? Well, I mean, you could draw some comparisons to that fairly with some of the retro games that are coming up. In fairness, this console is out. It's been out for at least a couple of years now, so it's not vaporware right now. It's out. There's consoles available that you can buy right now. There's a decent sized library right now, and more games that are coming out and announced for the rest of the year. So that's what it has going for it, for sure. But it's not really competing with any of the mainstream systems, and I think that kind of raises an interesting question, because this system is actually essentially fully powered by cartridges that you get to plug into the system, kind of like the Switch. But these cartridges are a little bit bigger, and the Versus console actually can support up to 2 cartridges at the same time. And it doesn't matter any of the cartridges, you could just plug it in and it'll just show up the titles on the screen, and you can pick and choose from there. What's really cool too is with the firmware updates that are coming out, every time you update the firmware updates, you actually get access to a specific game of the month type of a game that is a newer game that's developed by an indie studio or person, and it's kind of an incentive to update the firmware other than giving you some more quality of life features. So really, who is this console for? That's the big question that comes to mind, because I've seen it out for a couple of years, and I decided to pull the trigger on it. And I'll tell you a little bit why in a few minutes. But who is this really for? What is the audience that would really enjoy this system? And I would say, in general, people who enjoy 8-bit, 16-bit European games. So games that came out on the Amiga, that came out on Mega Drive, consoles like that, European arcade, things like that. A lot of the titles that have come out have come out from some of those licensed publishers that are a little bit bigger in Europe. That you have seen, a lot of them you have seen in the States, but generally you've seen, from what I've been able to see, were kind of more popular in Europe. And it's interesting to say that because essentially the games that are coming out, and the games I'll go into in a minute, are essentially the rating on it, instead of the ESRB, it's a PEGI rating system. So it is European based console, so that makes total sense, right? But also, who is this for? I'd say people that are interested in newer indie games developed by for older systems or older sensibilities. So you have some indie games that have been coming out for the Dreamcast or for the Mega Drive again, or retro computers, and those are starting to appear on the Evercade line of systems. Also, for people that really are tied to physical games, having that physical game in your collection and not having to be required to download anything, updates, patches, definitely going to be in your wheelhouse for sure. Flexibility to play these games either on the go or in your home console. Taking the cartridge, it's got the save games on there, plugging them in your handheld console. I believe one of them is called the EXP, or going back to the Versus home console. So definitely up your alley if you want to be able to go on the go or at home. And also people who enjoy color game manuals. They're back, baby. They're all in there. So yeah, that definitely something that I absolutely love. And the boxes don't really take up any shelf space. Let me grab one really quick. So you can see, you got the game right here. Got the game box. It's pretty small. I mean, compared to like a CD jewel case right here. You know, a little bit smaller. Of course, a little bit thin. Not as thin as a jewel case, but you get the idea. And again, full color manual. So, oh yeah. Absolutely great. I love it. Yeah. So, yes, please. Absolutely fantastic. So, what does this really have to offer? That's kind of the next thing, because the console is great, the handheld is great, but it's really up to the games that are out for the system and coming out. So, you have a few different classifications. You have the home console collection. So, most of the cartridges that come out are essentially collections of games, either by publisher or arcade collections, home console collections, indie collections, things like that. But some of the publishers that have made home console collections include Atari, Namco, Codemasters, Data East, Interplay, Pico Interactive, Technos, Intellivision, Bitmap Brothers, Renovation, Sunsoft, and Gremlin. So those are some of the publishers. I don't believe it's a comprehensive list at the time of filming. Those are the ones that I've seen. You also have, and those are typically red boxes. So you can see this one's a purple box, and I actually mark it with arcade. In this case, you got arcade on the right there, Technos Arcade, and you also have. So those are red boxes, but you also have, again, the purple boxes. In this case, these are the arcade ports. So again, Technos, Data East, Galeco, Atari, Jaleco, Ireme, Toplin, Pico Interactive. And then you also have a different category as well. You have some indie games that are out as well from studios like Mega Cat Studios, Morph Cat Games, indie collections or games made for the Nintendo, Mega Drive, Game Boy, and more. So just general collections. And then you also have a couple of home computer collections, specifically for Commodore 64, Team 17, and Delphine software. But more recently, there are some native games that are being developed for it, and some of them are kind of like remasters or ports. But you do have one of the newer native games that's out is Cathedral. So that's something that's to look out for. But that being said, The really great thing about this system as well too, pretty much all of the new releases that come out are in the $20 to $30 price range. So when you buy them brand new, you can go online, and depending on where you're importing them from or you're buying them from, generally I've seen them around 20 to 30 US dollar range brand new. And depending on, some of the games are actually being sunset. So depending on the aftermarket value, they might go up, might go down, not sure. But that's one of the advantages of this as well. So if you're into retro game collecting and some of these are really, seem interesting to you, it's a pretty low barrier of entry currently for the pricing, which is great. So let's talk about, for a moment, what the future looks like for this. So I just named off quite a few different publishers that have game collections and have titles out for the Evercade. And what is the future really looking out like this? So they've really been announcing some newer titles that have been coming out and coming out in the next few months or so. Some of them are indie home computer games and 16-bit console ports. Again, we're going to be having some more native ports come out, and I'm going to be talking about that because they announced recently, not just today, but probably a month or two ago, Duke Nukem collections. So this one really piqued my interest because, again, I was on it was on my radar for quite a bit, and I'm like, this seems great, but it was another system to collect for. But then they announced the Duke Nukem collection, and those are getting the remaster treatment. So this includes Duke Nukem 1 and 2 for home DOS computers, and it's also getting Game Boy Advance version of Duke Nukem, and it's also getting the PlayStation 1 titles and ports. So things like Duke Nukem 3D Total Meltdown, which is the PlayStation 1 port that has never really seen the light of day beyond the original version. You're also getting Time to Kill, Land of the Babes as well in both of those collections. So they're touting as in-house. So they develop them in-house enhancements and native ports of those games. So that really kind of brought me over the edge. I'm a big Duke Nukem fan. I remember playing 1 and 2 on DOS as a kid on my, I believe it was like a 386, 286 maybe. And yeah, so having native ports on those is fantastic, and that's coming out this year. So that really kind of pushed me over the edge to get one of these. The other thing too, as far as the future holds, so Atari licensing is expiring on these. So essentially they're not going to be producing any more of the Atari based collections. So those are, they've made them, but they're not going to be making any more of those games right now. So that's coming up in the future. Some speculation that I have, and this is just purely from what I'm seeing, since they've been getting a lot more traction in collecting licenses and outputting these different collections and getting more experience with the hardware, they've recently started talking more about native ports and newer indie games coming out. So I feel like we're going to be starting to see more of these Evercade exclusive games, or at least games that are natively ported to the Evercade in its own console, instead of just scraping together licensed IPs from over 30 years ago and putting them on the system. It's going to be newer stuff, whether they're newer stuff that have been built for older systems or newer stuff built for Xbox Live Arcade and things like that. I just kind of threw that out. So that's kind of my speculation. And they also dropped game preservation as a motivation. That's on their blog, on their website, and that was in, I believe, the Duke Nukem blogs, one of the couple different blogs that they have on there about Duke Nukem. So that seems to be a buzzword that they're focusing on, at least in the immediate term. I don't know how far they're going to go with that and what they really mean by focus on game preservation, what they're going to actually be doing to highlight that. But they did drop that term in the Duke Nukem releases and ports. So maybe more to come with that. We don't know, but I'm excited about it if that's true. We talked about some of the exciting things that are coming out and some of the things that it can do, but let's talk about a couple of the cons for a moment. So in this case, with the Evercade versus the home console, unfortunately, not all games work with it, and specifically naming the Namco Museum. And the reason why is when they did licensing for the Namco Museum collections, they only licensed them to work on handheld consoles. Not sure why. So when you put it in the home console, it just doesn't work. Every other game collection seems to work and is compatible, so I don't see that as much of an issue, especially, to be honest with you, since Namco has really released a lot of games across multiple collections over the years. So unless there's something that's really only highlighted here maybe once that's been a re-release, I don't really foresee that as an issue, but it is kind of a bummer, and I hope they can rectify that. So a couple other things that just I want to throw in there, and some of these are nitpick type of a thing for this, is they don't include an HDMI cable or a USB power brick in with the console. I know that, you know, everybody's got HDMI, so that's totally okay. The power brick, I might be the only one here, so if I am, that's fine, but I'm starting to run out of power bricks. You know, I feel like everything that I get that's powered by USB, they just assume, hey, you got a power brick, that's great. I used to have a junk drawer filled with cables and bricks and stuff, and I'm running out of them. That being said, I think it's just a me problem. I need to probably go out and get some better USB power bricks that are like multi-bricks and stuff. So that's probably just a me thing, but yeah, it's fine if it's there to cut costs. That's fine. I ended up getting it on sale anyways. I got the system that comes with the one game and the one controller just because it was on like a turbo sale, so I'm okay with that. That's kind of a nitpick, but the other thing too is, depending on your tastes, and this is totally subjective, but depending on your tastes, you might think that some of the collections, if you go through the different titles, you might think that some of them are filler games. Like you'll see, 20 games on this cartridge for the collection, and you look at it and you're like, I don't even recognize half of them. Depending on who you are, you might see that as filler. From what I've seen, generally the quality of the games have been pretty good. At least the ports have been good, or the emulation has been good. So at least if they were garbage, then they're still garbage. And if they controlled well, the controllers that come in are fine. They're fine. They're not the most amazing quality controllers that come packed in, so they generally are fine. But I'd say it really is one of those things where, as a retro game collector, generally people have a higher tolerance for garbage, because I'm just going to throw this right out there. If you're collecting for the NES, if you're collecting for the Wii, if you're collecting for systems that have released games, you know, like they're not really rare consoles with low game counts, even then you got garbage, right? Who we kidding, right? But it's going to be expected that there's going to be games that you just don't like. And whether you buy the collection for just like 3 or 4 different games out of the 20 or 12 or whatever comes in the collection, that's up to you. So you could either collect them all, or you can get the collections that you really do like. I do feel like there is something for everybody, but to roll it back as a con, I feel like subjectively, depending on who you are, you might see that some of the collections, or at least a few of the collections, just have filler games in there. So again, that's really based on familiarity of the publishers and the games that you really are looking at in the collection. You might look at a collection and say, I don't recognize any of these. That might be a good way to start, refreshing your palette on games that you've played. Maybe stray away from some of the popular Zelda type games and Metroid games and stuff like that that you've already played. So this might be a good opportunity, but some people might see as a con as it's just a garbage dump of collections. So I personally don't feel that way, but I could see how some people would, right? The other thing too that's at the end of my list for cons at the moment is just there's not a lot of marketing out there. I feel like most of the things I've seen about this have been word of mouth. I haven't really seen a lot of people talking about this over the past couple of years. And maybe because it's been a kind of a slow burn of a console, maybe that's why. I don't know, but I feel like it's working against it. And I feel like the biggest marketing push that they've had recently was because of Duke Nukem. Everybody knows Duke Nukem pretty much. I mean, if you're over the age of like 20, 25, you probably know of Duke Nukem. And if you haven't, if you're younger, then you probably have seen memes about Duke Nukem. So that was kind of one of the bigger marketing pushes, and I really hope that in the future they can really take hold of some of these IPs and be able to get some more marketing out there and get some more backing on this, because from my experience, again, entry point, very low cost compared to other things on there, especially with the amount of library and collections that are out there now. I think it's a great time to get into it. So just to dive into my summary of what I think about all of this is, I think there's a genuinely diverse selection of games and collections. You get a little bit of everything here, as far as retro game, 8-bit and 16-bit type collection. A little bit of 32-bit, not much, but it sounds like we're getting there, especially with the new Duke Nukem collection coming out with PS1 ports. The future seems pretty bright, especially it sounds like they have some more in-house capability and capacity to make native ports or bring licenses over. That sounds really great. The future seems pretty bright for these future releases. So again, the big focus on physical games at an affordable price for the retro game enthusiast and market. This is they're cornering the market on this. This is their market, is the collection, getting people to play games that maybe they haven't played before at a really affordable price in this day and age, $20 to $30 brand new for these ports and collections. Another piece of the summary is you don't really have generally the most popular games on this console. They're definitely taking up some IP that you haven't really seen before or seen in a long time and putting them on this platform, which I think can be a plus for sure. It's something that it's not the same old rehashes of collections and IPs that you see every like 2 or 3 years on every new platform. You're seeing some fresh stuff in here. You're seeing some ports. You're seeing some publishers and developers that haven't seen the light of day in a long time, or some new indie titles that maybe you haven't been exposed to otherwise. So that is fantastic. Another point, Duke Nukem 1 and 2 remastered. Come on, that alone worth the price of admission, in my opinion. Just in my opinion, that's it. So again, it went under my radar for quite a while, but I really think it's worth the price of admission for collectors that want to jump into something new and actually play something new. Because again, you're buying one cartridge and you're getting a bunch of games on that cartridge. I feel like it's really focused on people that want to experience some new, diverse games that you haven't even been exposed to in the past, especially if you're in the States. If you're in the US or Canada, maybe you haven't seen a lot from these publishers in general, and you want to dive more into that side, especially if you're maybe a more casual collector. You're more of just like, I want to play the classics. I want to play the ones that everybody recommends. Well, this is your chance to dive into some more slightly obscure stuff. If you're burnt out from retro collecting on original hardware with original hardware prices, and you really don't want to dive into the world of upscalers, and you don't want to dive into the world of custom retro hardware, of optical drive emulators and flash cards and stuff like that, which I totally understand if you don't want to do that. I feel like it can be a big old money sink, it could be a big old time sink. Personally, I love that type of stuff. But I think this whole package of the console, whether it's portable or the home console, the Versus console that I'm talking about now, and the collections of games that are at a really great price to jump into, it's as easy as it ever could be to jump in and play some of these games. So no fuss, no streaming, no required updates over Wi-Fi overnight if you got garbage internet, things like that. You don't want to tolerate any of that. You just want to plug and play. You want to introduce somebody who's kind of newer into retro collecting, and you want to give them something that you all can play, whether it's a single player game or up to, 4-player multiplayer, anything in between. This is a great place to bring everybody together. I think this is something that we really need more of in the retro scene right now. I think we need to get behind this personally. This is something that, especially if they're going to be pushing more of a preservation attitude, if they're going to be bringing more IP and more attention to more obscure publishers and whatnot, and they're standing behind their stance of having physical games that work with no Wi-Fi updates. And again, the updates that I've downloaded so far were more just quality of life updates for menu and a couple different features. Plus you get that game of the month, which is like a super big bonus. But that's all. It's not required. If you just want to open it up, plug in your game, and you're good to go. That's it. That's all you need to do. Come on. When was the last time you honestly said you could do that with a new game console? So, just going to put it out there. But that being said, I'm going to drop a couple of resource links. I was able to see there's some great communities out there. There's Evercade on Reddit, of course. You have Evercade.info, which is actually a really great central place for information on games and what's to come. And honestly, as a bonus, go to Evercade's blog. Check that out. They got some really great behind the scenes talk about some of the new stuff coming out. They go in depth on some of their collections that they were releasing to talk a bit more about the games that are on the collection. It doesn't seem like they're just like a shotgun scatter of garbage games on these collections. They actually go into depth in a lot of these games and talk about some of them. So it looks like they actually did go over and see, these are the games we want on these collections. They kind of curated it a bit. So definitely check out their blog. I think it's an interesting read. They do have some videos and whatnot that have come out. So check it out if you want to learn more about it. And again, thank you for jumping on today. This is probably a little bit longer than I expected it to be, but I recently got it, and I have to shout out G to the Next Level. You made a post that really kind of put me over the edge to want to get one. And yeah, I really hope there's a bit more marketing that comes out. I hope that this is on more people's radar, because I feel like people don't take it as seriously as they could, because the more these people at Blaze get more attention on this, I really feel like this could keep growing. This could keep going in a good direction. So yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm excited about starting to build my mini collection. Currently, I have about 2 or 3 titles by the time this video releases, and I do have the Duke Nukem collections on pre-order. This is not sponsored. This is just something that I wanted to talk about for a few minutes, because I'm really excited about the prospect. I'm excited about the titles that have come out so far, the selection that's out there, but also the future. So yeah, so thanks for stopping by. Thanks for listening to me talk a little bit about the Evercade Versus, and then subsequently the other Evercade line of portable consoles. I think it's great what they're doing, and I hope they continue down this road. And I hope they also focus a bit more on preservation of titles, preservation, porting, bringing things out of obscurity that people may have not heard of in a while, introducing a new generation to some of these classic titles. I think that's great. And honestly, physical games, especially with the recent announcements and rumors about retailers stopping carrying physical games, that's one of the core tenets of a lot of retro collectors, is keeping a physical collection, whether it's movies, whether it's video games. I'm kind of that school. I do like the convenience of streaming and the convenience of downloading games, especially Game Pass. I think it's great. But physical games, especially with companies like Blaze doing this with the Evercade, I feel like if we keep backing efforts like this, then this is going to keep staying alive, like vinyl did. Vinyl music, it came back, right? So you never know. I think this is a good bridge in the meantime, and it's something that's worthwhile. So that being said, thank you again. I appreciate everybody who's left comments on my videos, who's subscribed, who's engaged with me at all across any social media platform. Thank you so much for your engagement and support, and I'm looking forward to what's to come out next. So thank you so much. Have a great day, and game on.